Hello and welcome to the Stampscapes lab. We're going to be trying some of this wood grain paper because it's so fun to use and it is really quick to make a scene. I'm going to try it in a horizon card. Okay, so the difference between a horizon card and a reflection card is both use the interior of the inside of a card, but on the horizon card we don't use some kind of mirrored cardstock to reflect what's going on in the upper area to represent something like water. Could be ice if you're doing a winter scene. But let's see what this paper might look like in this type of format here. Gives it a real kind of three-dimensional pop-up type of look without having to really do anything three-dimensional beyond, your standard card base here. Okay, so I'm using the wood-grained placemat paper. Feels really strange saying that still for me. Okay, so the wood grain, there's different grains on there. They scan some sort of wood, and you can take a look at the wood and figure out, okay, if I'm going to stamp this, then in this case I'm using nature set number 10. That's focused around the country chapel small. And if it's going to be stamped somewhere in this area down below like this, then you can kind of figure out what area of the grain kind of looks more like sky to you. So I'm going to go this way. I mean, I have two pieces here. And by the way, this paper comes in 11 by 17 if you haven't watched my earlier videos. I mean, I don't know if you're going to go all the way and say, okay, this looks like the most sky to me, so I'm going to cut out my little quarter page around that. You could. I mean, this paper is so inexpensive, and it's, they're placemats, so they're disposable placemats, so they're inexpensive, all right? Doesn't, but you can cut out, specific areas if you want to focus some specific, maybe knotted area around what you're composing down there. It's I don't know, it's really cool. Okay, so I found that StazOn works the best for me. I mean, this looks like wood. Of course, it's just printed paper, so you have all that printer's ink on there. And I just found that StazOn, in my initial tests, gave me the best impression quality. All right, so on a horizon card, what you're representing is things that are on this flat area are going to be flat. They're not raised. Okay, so I'm not going to stamp like a pine tree down here. Although, I mean, you could do something like that, but I tend to go for things that are going to be a little bit more flat on that flat area, okay? Now see, even with the StazOn ink, I don't get 100% black impressions, usually, okay? I did re-ink my StazOn pad before I started this, but other types of ink can give you kind of a much lighter impression, okay? Now, I tell people don't go by this Clair because my Clair is a little bit dry. I thought I inked it up enough, but I'm gonna stamped out a little bit lighter. Clair is an oil-based pigment ink, so maybe the oil takes longer to penetrate the paper. Maybe I didn't hold it down long enough, which might have worked, or just re-inking your pad before you're stamping. Dye-based inks, water-based ink, trying to get through this was really tough. Brilliance and StazOn are more surface-oriented types of inks. Brilliance is water-based, quick-drying pigment ink, so you get a pretty good impression with that. But StazOn's, one of those that are completely surface-oriented there. Okay, so I have this, and I'm going to, I should have stamped out my road beforehand, probably, but let's go for this road right about here. Okay, this is the curvilinear road, so the road ends up right there, and just need to keep that in mind. And I'm going to kind of aim that roughly for somewhere around that porch area, okay? Like I said, it might have been easier to stamp this one first. You gotta work fast with StazOn, of course. Okay, let's see. Especially when it's kind of more of a delicate image like this with just a bunch of dots. Okay, so that is there. I'm going for roughly like that. And if you don't get it exactly on there, that's no problem. Okay, now I'm stamping this a little bit higher than, or off the page, off this one, okay? Just because this, I'm not going to be going for the curves of this top part of the stamp here, because this is a, horizon card format here. All right, so it looks like that. Okay, so you can see this, or more like this. Okay, so I have this kind of pathway. I was going to say, it's called Carlinder Road, but when you have it going right to, the entryway of this chapel, it's more of a, I don't know, path or something like that. Okay, trail. Okay, or walkway. I guess that'd be an even better term. Okay, so we have this area off to the sides like this. That's what I have designed the tree cluster for. This one's the small tree cluster. I just try to get that residual ink that still might be a little bit wet off of my stamp when it stays on ink. Eventually I need to give it a really good cleaning because it gets, kind of a buildup on it. Okay, so let's go for our trees up here. You're going to overlap. You don't have to, but I overlap my my other impression a little bit. I mean, you could spread it out too if you want to have like a little gap in here for something else, or like an entryway into that back area. Let's do that. Let's leave a little bit of space like so. All right, maybe I'll put a hill back here, something like that. We'll leave this out for when that is created. Okay, so we're going to do some fill in here. This is called the sedge filler here. And what I'm going to do is we have this kind of just sitting right in the middle of this piece of paper, so it ends abruptly like that. Okay, now I have a lot of space down here. Usually I don't, because this is usually stamped lower, and I have something, like a cabin or something like that at the end of the road, or just a road going off into the, forest or something like that. So this is usually stamped down here. So this is usually on the bottom part of a page. So we have this big area here, and that's where this comes into play. The sedge filler pretty much fills in any area. Okay. So what we'll do is, let's start up here. Okay. I'll go like this, and you're overlapping that and that with this. So this, see where that went in there like that, and then I'll have another one up there like for another like background hill. Okay, so let's go like this. Now, I mean, this is a sedge filler. It just looks like this right here. So it's very light. It's supposed to be light. You don't want anything real heavy in there. And we're already stamping it over a textured background. So it's not showing up too much, but it's giving us that texture that we need to give, kind of to link up our different areas here. Let's work on this piece right here, our top piece. Let's go with a little bit more imagery in there. We have this. This is going to be too big for up here. So what you do is you use, all of the Stampscapes designs have been designed to be used in their entirety, with multiple impressions or partial. So when I'm looking at my designs, I'm looking at it in their entirety, but I'm also looking at it, in this case, as smaller trees on the top. So I give all my designs a lot of attention to each little section. So I look at things in the whole, and then I kind of dissect it in my head and think about how this is going to work in partials. So even if this is way here, up here at the top of the page and it's going off the page, you know, I'm paying really close attention to this bottom portion to make sure that that section is interesting in itself. Or, you know, just can be used in that type of format. You don't want to kind of have other areas of the stamp kind of, unrefined, I don't know, not defined as a, you know, potential entity in itself. So lower half should be, you know, as interesting as the top half, even when it's used, you know, separately from that other half. Okay, so let's work with this one right here. Okay, so we have this road coming down here like that. So I'm going to, in my mind, extend that down like this. Okay, now there's a top portion to this sedge filler. Okay, you can see it. It's kind of narrower on the top and wider on the bottom slightly. Well, this is more delicate up there, so you can see that as being the top. You can even put a little arrow on here if you want, designating the top. But I'm going to go like this. I'm taking this down like this. Okay. Like that. And then we'll do the same thing up here. So this is, again, this is top, like that. Okay. Let's go like this. And we'll fill in right here because it's the sedge filler. Okay. See, I'm overlapping this way, side by side, and left to right. Now that's a little bit heavy-handed. Sometimes I'd recommend, after you ink it up, you just do a quick wipe off on the edges. And you can do a little top and bottom so that it stamps out a little bit lighter, because certain areas get a little bit heavy sometimes. For me, I'm not worried about that because I know that I'm going to be filling in some other areas with other imagery, textures and tones. Okay. All right, so let's get our bearings here and take a look and see what this is looking like so far. Okay. So remember, this is the flat area right here, relatively flat, but look at that right there. Doesn't that look real three-dimensional? And we haven't even added any kind of shadows in here or anything like that. Other additional imagery, some foreground imagery down here. This one will look really good with the fences, I think. Or I can put some plants. That's a tough one. That fence would look really great right here as a foreground imagery. The fence really should be going up here like this, but like I said, you know, we're not going to have another side to this stamp, you know, horizon stamp flipping up this way, so I don't know. It'll have the illusion of a little bit of texture up there. Boy, this one's tough. I really like the look of that. See, I was going to put just some bushes right here, okay, just with my leaves stamp, like that. But that looks, I think that structure of that fence would look pretty good there. Let's go with the fence. Sometimes you got to change, you know, you got to change up a little bit from your initial kind of notions of what you're going to do with something. Okay, but this is a little textural pebble stamp, okay? It's tiny rock small. So there's a little bit of a line here where this stamp ended, right? And just the paper began. Now, I don't think, you know, I think things are looking pretty good without it. And like I said, we can add in some additional tone, okay? Textures with, you know, colored pencils or something like that. But I think having some of this, see these rocks going up here? So I have the rocks going from up there, and then they're also coming down here. So it's connecting up these two areas more than it would have. So just like color can bring continuity or shadows or something like that, you can do it from a textural standpoint as well. I'm going to put some of this texture out here in the grasses as well. Okay, so you see something like that. You can overlap this. You can come up with, you know, some lighter impressions by going for the third, you know, impression, second, third impression off of it. Well, let's take a look at those fences. Let's see, where are my fences? I think I might have just used them. Yeah, here we go. All right, so this is going to be the right side fence. It's on here. I'm going to use the larger one. Comes in multiple sizes depending on where you want to stamp something out. See how this kind of curves around like that? And we'll do something like this. We'll have it coming from off the page. It looks like that's going to really fit in there. So these are just some smaller ones. If you had a fence way up here, so, you know what I mean? If you're going to put a fence up there, then maybe you use one of the smaller ones. Then there's these background fences. Like if you want to put one, maybe I'll put one right here. Maybe I'll put a fence like right here and right here. A smaller version. Okay, but let's take a look and see what this one's going to look like in the foreground here. Okay. And I'm going to have this coming from off the page as well. That's what you can do with Stampscape stamps. You just have things overlapping. Things go off the page. You don't have to use the full image all the time. Okay. You can stamp off from left to right. It's one of those things that people kind of, you know, find kind of strange because you're usually using the entire stamp every time you stamp it. So sometimes they're not comfortable with just stamping kind of a portion of it. So you can see this right here. It was probably going from about, see, I don't have that bottom rung in there, so it's like from here, and this whole post isn't here, so it's like from here over. Okay. And that's not, you know, because it had to be that way, but I think it gives it a little bit more depth if you do it. Stuff coming from off the page onto the page like that. Oftentimes with your foreground imagery. Okay, so let's take a look and see what that looks like. Here, like that. Look how three-dimensional that whole thing looks like so far. Okay. Let's see what this looks like. I haven't used my kind of smaller fences in a while. Let's see here. Go like this. I'll be coming from off the page. No. This one I'm going to put... Okay, I have like two sizes of this. I'm trying to figure... I think this is the size right here. There's an even smaller version of this one too, if you want to put something like way back in there in the distance, but we won't go that far. All right, so I don't need, this doesn't need to fit on my whole block here. Let's see here. I think this will create kind of this shape continuity between the background and the foreground with that smaller fence in the background there. I had to stamp that out because I haven't used these in a while, and I've created it where I haven't used these in conjunction for a while, but I know how all these fences all kind of link up with each other, but I just haven't done it for a while, so had to kind of refresh my memory just to make sure. You can have these fences go around something too, like around, I don't know, a house or something like that. They can actually go around like that. All right, see that there? So these are kind of vertical there. Let's take a look and see what we're looking at here. I'm spending a little bit more time on the imagery here because I almost stamped that right across my road. Don't block off your pathway there, the fence, but the fence is higher, so see it kind of this pathway just goes right through there, right into there, like that. The fences give it a pretty good kind of structuring in there, and kind of forces kind of perspective with the larger version and the smaller version in the background. They're slightly different fences, but yeah, you know, who cares? Okay, so let's see. It feels kind of strange doing these cards on this wood grain paper because you don't have to really do too much to them after you stamp stuff out. So it's almost like I got to do some coloring or something like that on there. Okay, so I'm going to give this a little bit more texture. We'll put some grasses next to this fence right here. I just do this quick little addition like that, okay? So I stamp it like this, I go like this, and down here, you know, pre-ink in between, especially the stays on. You can go for a second impression, you know, so it looks like some lighter grass there. I was gonna say I don't think I would go for a third impression because the blade of grass would be lighter than the fence, but I don't know. Give it a try. Depends. I guess that depends on how wet your pad is. See that right there? Something like that. All right. So what I'm thinking about is, do I have some additional grasses in here, or something like that? I don't think we need to do too much. I don't know. Like I said, it's really bizarre because I feel like I should be doing a lot more, but I don't know. When I look at these pieces, it kind of tells me that I don't really need to do a whole lot more. I can go for some additional leaves or something like that, like a little bushes over here, but I don't think I'm going to do that. All right, so let's okay. So see where this fence kind of goes like this now. Remember I stamped that sedge filler like this, but that sedge filler isn't so dark, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some more of this pebble right here. That's kind of indicative of that road texture, so we have those pebbles coming out this way. I should say they're tiny rocks small because I do have another stamp design called Pebbles. So this looks like this right here. Now it looks like more like the dirt road because I stamped those rocks right in this section here. Okay, so let's give this a little bit of tone in here, and I think we'll, you know, call it a scene. I do want to stamp a word stamp up there too, and I think that would be really cool. Okay, so thing that I found that works really good on these pieces is colored pencil, okay? This type of paper takes the colored pencils just fine, all right? So let's give this a little bit more kind of depth and volume. There's not a whole lot of, when you look at this area in here, there's not a whole lot of difference between kind of light and shade, okay? Now I don't want to make this real heavy in terms of my usage of color. And we could keep this in the spirit of like a sepia tone print or something like that by just using some brown tones. But I might add just a touch of a little bit of color in here, like some greens for the grasses or something like that, just to separate it from this road a touch. Okay, but I think I am going to start off with a little bit of brown here, okay? And you can see where this curvilinear road, it is a little bit darker right around where the grass, you know, the edge of the grassway meets that road. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go in here very lightly like this, and just you're reiterating the light and shadow design of the stamp. See that little bit of tinge like that? And then here it goes off here in the background. Okay, so just barely touch your paper, you know, your pencil down. You're going for like a 5% version of this color, okay? I mean, you can end up going darker, but that's what you do to start off with, just to see, you know, how things are looking. You can always go darker. And the colored pencils, you can kind of erase it a little bit, but, you know, why add on extra work is what I say. So I say start off very light to begin with. Okay, now see there's these little areas of the sedge filler. Okay, I'm darkening some of the darker areas of the sedge filler. Like I said, sedge fillers, it's a delicate image, you know, it's very light, even in the darker areas, but I'm darkening in some of those little textural forms in there. See that? And that's why I didn't worry about having it kind of a little bit, I don't know what the word is, blocky maybe around where, you know, some of the overlaps occurred. Okay, you see how this road is kind of popping out a little bit more? It's because I'm just going with a little bit of tone like this, like up here and down here, so it stands out more. So we've strengthened our kind of visual direction of the area. Here's this little area within the fence. You can color the fence too if you want to, like this a little bit. Okay, but let's see this right now, like that. Okay, let's do the same thing up here. You can see kind of those sedge filler textures right in here, okay, like this. But also, we have these trees up here now, planted within our grasses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a little bit of shadow underneath them. Now go really lightly because we have a lot of other colors that we can use in here, okay? So I'm just going with a really light version. I'm putting a little bit of shadow underneath there. You can color in your chapel if you want to, a little bit. Like that. Okay? So see, it brings a little bit of that color continuity from bottom to top or top to bottom. All right, now let's add in some, let's start off with a real light colored pencil, okay? And now I'm going to add this in the grassy areas. It's just very, very faint and subtle. You can see if you like the look. Leave some of these areas a little bit lighter so you get the interplay of light and shadow. So where I'm adding this in, I'm using it a little bit more in a wider area than just that brown, but largely I'm adding it where I added that brown. Now I can't see exactly, you know, everywhere where I did it, but just roughly, okay? So here it is in the shadows, like this. And see that when you have kind of lighter areas, the form seems to be varied a little bit more. It's undulating, you know, there's lights and darks within there. It's not flat. If you color everything up uniformly with any type of medium, what you're saying is that there's not really changes in the form. It's more like, it would be like flat concrete or something like that. But when you have this, you're saying that there's like clusters of grass and it's reflecting light differently. There's, you know, darker areas in the shadows and there's lighter areas in the, you know, usually the top portions of things. So like my hand here, top portion, knuckles, lighter, area where it goes down gets darker, right? So we have something like this. See, this is just one colored pencil. I think that looks pretty good. Let's go like this again. And like I said, I'm just keeping this kind of subtle. Maybe this is the only green that I'll use on here. And the reason why too, I mean, we have this wood grain paper, so I mean, I could block it off where you can't see that wood grain at all. I mean, but if you're using kind of a textured paper, it's probably because you like the texture in there, so you want some of those textures to be showing in here, not just completely blocked off. I mean, you could though. I mean, it's, you know, that's just one way to do it. Let's go with this little slightly darker green. Just, I'll add that in these shadows just for a little bit of variation. Maybe I'll just use it down here in the lower portion and not up here. Although I just did a couple things. I just wanted to see if it would, it's even showing very much. Yeah, this looks pretty good. So see, I'm just kind of adding that around, kind of in the darker areas like that. Let's take a look and see how this is coming out. All right, so that's pretty fun, I think. Okay, so here's my black pencil. And I'm going to reiterate the shadow areas just a touch more. I'm going to do this really lightly, okay? Because you can always, like I said, you can always go darker if you want to. But this is, we stamped our imagery out in black, so sometimes going with black is the thing to kind of flesh out. It's the color, it's the value, or tone, I guess, or whatever, shade, to kind of model the forms, but I'm going with like a 5% gray though, right? Just go very lightly. Some people say, I can't, I have a really heavy hand. You have a heavy hand if you're going like that. So if you have a too heavy a hand, go up here, hold your pencil up here. I mean, I can still, go pretty dark, from up here, but it's much easier to go darker down here, okay? So hold your pen up, pencil a little bit higher if you need to, And it just, I don't know, it's kind of naturally, you just go a little bit lighter. I mean, you'll get the feel of it, then go back to kind of a more kind of natural, comfortable position or something like that. Okay, now I have these trees up here in this area, so I'm kind of darkening that area like that a little bit more. Like I'm putting some shadow right in here. Okay, and right around here we have that fence, so I'm going to go a little bit of kind of shading right up here. Like that, okay? I have these areas up here with the trees, a little bit of shadow work up here. Kind of creates a little bit more of a separation between the top and the hill and the sky. Okay, so that's what we're looking at right here. I mean, you could almost do this in one piece, then you just kind of fold it, in the center like that. Hadn't really thought to do that before until now. I don't know if it'd be easier to do or harder. I guess it'd be the same. You just have to really kind of... I would pre-fold it, though, just so you can see where the separation is, so you can tell where to, build your fencing up. You wouldn't want the fences to kind of like fold in the middle. You wouldn't want to have that on the fold. You know what I mean? So the fence would go like like that, like that type of thing. All right, let's go a little bit of shadow underneath our chapel. See, it's just this little kind of darker edge, like right there. I know it's like a, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch or something like that, but it kind of angers the chapel down a little bit more, and we'll darken it like that. We'll have it where it's, objects are casting shadows. Like that. All right, so I think that looks pretty fun. Let's bring in some little highlighting. Now, highlighting can really stand out on this tape of paper because there's no whites really on the paper. I'm going to use a kind of a tan pen. You can use a white though, but just kind of, when you start adding it in, kind of take a look at it, from arm's distance and see how, these little, in this case, dots are kind of affecting kind of the overall look of the scene. So I do like a little bit of highlighting and kind of additional textures within my pieces. I think it kind of brings the pieces alive. Now, these could represent highlights, but they can also represent something like little wildflowers in this grassy area here. Now see this fencing down here? I can kind of, do you see where the lighter areas are on the tops of these, you know, pieces of wood? I'm just going to lightly add in a little bit of additional lighting on the top sides of it, okay? So I'm just going, it's like you're adding a little check mark, okay? You don't have to do this in one mark, like this, okay? I'm just kind of like lightly sketching it. So see that right there? See how that looks a little bit more three-dimensional just with that little bit? Or you can put a little bit of a highlight on the tops of your posts, something like that. You know, kind of treat it a little bit differently from rung to rung or something like that. It doesn't have to be uniform, okay? In fact, it looks better if it's not uniform. So that kind of takes the, you know, the, I don't know, whatever, the burden off of us of having to be kind of, I don't know, whatever, uniform and perfect or whatever. Vary it. It kind of brings my, this is what I didn't worry about with my impressions. Again, I'm adding a lot of texturing in here. Highlighting, you know, we added some shadow work in there. Color, you know, coloring too with that grass. So that's why you don't, you know, when with your impressions now, if I miss half the impression, yeah, you know, that might be a problem. But where things are just kind of overlapping each other, like this area is a little bit dark right there. I'll just put a few dots over the top of it, and it kind of just, you know, it looks fine to me. It kind of eradicates any kind of irregularities with, you know, early stage, you know, kind of processes, i.e. the impressions, okay? All right, so see that kind of brings that little meadow alive like that. Let's get a few more highlights. Now, in the background, I don't do quite as many highlights like that, but we'll have a little bit of shimmer going on in the background. Let's do something. Let's have a little bit of fun here. Let's add in. Let's add in a little bit of pink here. Is that too pink? Couldn't tell which one was kind of a duller pink. Duller as in, you know, kind of not as intense. Yeah, this one looks more pastel. Orange or something like that might be cool. These are the Artistro acrylic pens. Okay, I haven't used my pink in a while. Let's get it flowing nicely, like so. Pink really should harmonize pretty well with the that wood grain paper. Now this, I mean, this really kind of represents wildflowers in here. Are we already in spring? It's like we're not even in fall yet. But that looks really fun. So I don't know if you can see that. Use those pinks in there. It just, I mean, it's just kind of a subtle kind of a change from the, you know, the greens and the browns in there. The inherent brown of the paper. Kind of makes, I don't know, that makes things a little bit more charming, I think. Oh, let's see. So I did these little highlights on this fence post. Let's bring out this chapel a little bit. You see these two columns here? After all, the chapel is kind of the, you know, the focal point of the scene. So I'm going to put, you know, a little bit of highlighting on here. You might be able to use like a colored pencil too, like a light colored pencil. And, you know, bring out, you know, some of the, kind of the highlights on the chapel. I'm not going with too much right there, but see, that's right there. I'm using this pen really sparingly. Sometimes it really gets flowing like really fast, and I kind of wanted a little bit scratchier so I can get kind of a smaller mark. Okay, I'm putting a little bit on this fence post here to just bring out the fence from the background a touch. All right, little, just slightly more three-dimensional maybe. Okay. And we have their little kind of I don't know, to me these horizon cards or reflection cards kind of look a little bit magical to me. It looks really 3D, you know, just for the fact that this is you know, we're holding this in a kind of a three-dimensional way. It looks like a pop-up card to me, but without having to do any kind of pop-up card types of touches. It looks like I'm looking through something into like a little different world when I open, you know, kind of one of these cards up like this. So you can put like a quote stamp out here. You know, I put a word stamp or something like that, but I'm going to put an additional word stamp up here, I think. And like I said, I can mount this onto a different colored paper. Maybe black is a little bit too harsh for this one, you know, because this is such a light scene. Maybe I'll look into that. So let me find a quote stamp for this one. I keep using this other one, Reason and Faith, but I think that would be really appropriate with this whatever compositional scenario. So maybe I'll use that one. Okay, I have the In the Woods We Return to Reason and Faith here. I don't know if this is actually the woods here, but you know, it's not nature. Okay, let's see. I do a test print here. Sometimes we ink up our pads a little bit differently, you know, unevenly or something like that, or I do. Just making sure that I have it equally like that. And go with our word stamp like so. That's the straightest I always get this one pretty straight. I don't know, for some reason. I just eyeball it. Oh, let's see, where did this... Here it is. That comes off this Scenic Sentiment sheet. Okay, I'm going to look for a piece of paper. I don't want to go with black. That's too harsh for this kind of scenario here. So I'm going to find a different cardstock to use for this one. Okay, I have formatted my piece into a piece of kind of a light blue startering paper. All right. I don't know, black was too harsh for this one. All right, so I'm going to do something here. I was trying to think of something, because I put this on the inside, it just doesn't, you know, another quote stamp out here. I mean, you could put another one out there, but I thought it might be appropriate for something else, but I'm going to do this right here. I'm going to put just like some little birds like this right in here, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do like a simple graphic element out here on the outside, like this. Now I think that if you're making this for someone, I think it'd be really elegant to put, you know, to whoever, you know, and then love someone else, or, you know what I mean? Something like down here, you know what I mean? I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I also thought about you can do something and use this little bit of wood thing in here, and you can put, you know, to someone right here if you want to. You could write it on here, like a little name thing or something like that, and put it right here. You know, so you have a little bit of that wood element. I've put a little bit of framing around it or something like that and put it down here. I think that would be really elegant, just to someone, You know what I mean? It's like a gift tag or something like that. And then they open it up like this. And there you have your scene. I think that looks really three-dimensional. Doesn't this look like it's really popping out? I mean, it is, because this... See, normally this would go right onto the scene. This would be stamped up higher, okay? So this is now, you know, like 4 inches away from this. So when you go like this, I mean, this does look very three-dimensional. You have this fence out here. Now, like I said, if the fence wasn't there, I would have put, you know, some leaves or some bushes or something like that. So you'd have those, you know, creating the distance in there too. But I just think that this is a really, really fun type of formatting here. And you can do all kinds of other things. You know, you have this sky up here. You can write a letter to someone. You know what I mean? People get, you know, if you have really great handwriting, or if you don't, you know, it doesn't really matter. It really personalizes things, but I think it'd be cool to, you know, make a little quick note, you know, been thinking about you, hope all's well. You know what I mean? You could be get well soon, hope you're feeling better, you know, love whoever. Or, you know, but I often do that like on the back of my piece right here. You know, you can write your letter and love whoever. So you have kind of a beginning, middle like this, and then you have your end piece like that. I, you know, write it like this right here. So it's kind of this visual sequencing that's kind of fun. Okay, so, you know, pretty fun format here. I do like the wood on wood. I think it looks pretty good. I'm almost kind of unaware of that being kind of a wood grain paper, but it certainly contributed to the I don't know, kind of expeditious nature of finishing that piece off. I did add in some, you know, a decent amount of colored pencils in there, and you know, these little dots in here, but I did think those dots really brought it to life. Don't have to do all that though. I think it looked pretty good. Just, you know, if you have really want to go for a really quick version of this, then you just don't color it in, and you just let the wood grain, you know, the paper do the work. But I think just, you know, even some minimal shading, even with like one color, you know, like a warm brown or something like that, would be really good, and it would look a little bit more antiqued maybe than this one looks. Okay, I think adding all these colors and all these little kind of textural elements in there, kind of, it doesn't look quite so antique-ish, but I still really love the end result on here. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like these videos and channel, hope you hit the like button and subscribe. Always appreciate you checking out the vids, and hope to see you on the next one.